morning. Alright, so the sun is just getting ready to come over the trees, but it's early and I wanted to get this out before, right now I'm in feeling mode before I have to switch gears into function mode, because this is, I think it's day 7, which technically it would be a week, which feels like an eternity. And I have to double check my calendar. Actually, I think I need to create some kind of way to mark the days, because it's, when you live like this, you don't have a Monday through Friday mindset. But now I don't even know what day it is, period, or what. Anyway, so I digress. What I wanted to talk about was, before, I would always talk to my family back in California once a week. And so, we're at that point where it's been more than a week now. And it's starting to get to me to not know what's happening to everybody else. One of the things that I really did not like about people prior to all of this was the shaming of the sheeple, right? All the people who think that they were so smart, prepping and being ready for whatever, and humiliating and shaming people who didn't want to know. And, my family doesn't want to know. I was weird. We just didn't talk about it. I would pretend, a lot. I wouldn't talk about a lot. And it's here. And it was getting harder and harder, as, it was getting harder and harder to pretend, because my life was becoming more and more about, this. And, no, I'm recording right now. I can't play with you. And there was getting less and less we could talk about, right? There was this like chasm, but I appreciate not wanting to know. I appreciate how much fear there would be in, I'm looking to see what she just went to grab and eat. I'm appreciating, how scary this is, because I've been thinking about it for over 10 years, and I am freaked out. I've been freaked out before all of this happened. And I don't want to shame people because they don't want to know. I didn't like listening to all of that. And people are still, I don't know, are really unbalanced. Something else is going on that wasn't normal mental illness. But to me, that's very different. The depression, anxiety, what we call mental illness, isn't really what I wanted to talk about today. Maybe tomorrow. It is my area, right? And so I don't want to, I'm intellectualizing, I'm switching to the left side, not the right side, because I am really feeling the loss and the grief. One of the things that would happen when people would come into the emergency room and women who'd been raped, or somebody who had something bad happen, and they didn't respond appropriately emotionally, then everybody would make judgments like, oh, well, you're not really thinking, that didn't really happen. We're so uncomfortable with real feelings. Again, that's what I love about crisis, is it really creates an authenticity. And I don't want to cry right now because I have a lot of stuff to do, but I want to really hit the point home that the not knowing, there's uncertainty about what's even happening. Is this just temporary? Is it permanent? What does this mean? I don't know what's happening with the people I care about. I don't even know what's happening with the people who are just a few miles, 50 plus miles away, right? Because that's too far. And I had told my family when I left the last time I saw them, that I'm not coming. If something happens, if there's a disaster or an emergency, I'm not going to go find you and come get you. Because we've had all those conversations years before about, we're running out of time and we don't want to talk about it and we don't think about it and I'm crazy and, that's Jill over there being whatever. And so, I have to let that go. In the same way, I'm still really upset about the puppy and the kitten that are back over there. It's been a week since I've known about them. I don't even know if they're there. In fact, I had this dream last night. I think I was combining family and animals where there were all these animals here. It was like a zoo. The guy across the street had invited all these strange animals. I mean, there was even an elephant pulling some kind of weird metal contraption it was tied to. And I remember feeling overwhelmed by all these animals. And then my mom and her sister showed up in their 1960s, 70 outfits, right? And looking beautiful. And, my aunt is dead. And I think, what triggered all that is I'm worried about my mom. I'm trying to remember where I put the hard copy pictures because I have some recent photographs, right? But most of our photographs are from more than 10 years ago, right? But the images were, from when I was a little tiny child, which I thought was weird. But I'm feeling the loss and the grief. And, there's a whole psychology theory around catastrophism. In the past we've had global catastrophes, and that we still carry that genetic memory, and how part of being upset about what's happening in our world is we're getting closer to it, and we're remembering what's in our DNA. And there's so much we don't understand about ourselves, and we've created this world where we don't want sadness, we don't want to talk about loss, it's just more, right? We don't want to grieve, we don't want to have empathy. People humiliate and shame out of insecurity and fear, and so you can understand it, but I don't like it. I don't want to be around it. It doesn't help to make fun of people. I don't like to be made fun of, and I have all kinds of things that make me weird and different, and it just makes me want to be alone. But there's just something very difficult about tremendous loss in the midst of what I'm assuming is a large-scale event, because there's no time. I would do that with people in the emergency room. I would tell them, don't do your feelings right now. Let's just get through the business of all of this. And then when you're home and when you're settled and you have the right place and the right time, you will grieve. But it's not here. It's not in the emergency room. And I remember having a chaplain who was new, and he was trying to show how cool he was. And, the woman is strapped down to the trauma board, and they're cutting all her clothes off, and of course she's terrified, and he's hanging over her face. This is one of my vivid memories. How do you feel? Because that's the right time to ask her that, right? I mean, it was so inappropriate. I was so angry, but that experience taught me a lot about how differently people grieve, how some people get violent. I had several of those things happen. Culturally there's massive differences. And how judgment-filled we are about the way other people do or don't grieve. But I think the greatest tragedy for Western civilization is we have lost our ritual around grief and loss. Somebody's not grieving. Somebody has found a green bottle. Hey, just let me finish this and you can have your bottle back. So we used to have, wakes, but there used to be ceremony and ritual and periods of time of mourning, right? You would wear black, or you'd wear an armband, or there was something that marked it, that gave you permission to grieve. There was a cultural norm. There was a guy who was doing really awesome work called Theater of War. I know this isn't relevant, but where he was resurrecting the Greek tragedies and helping people with PTSD. And you had like hardcore veterans who were connecting to these really old, tragic places. We don't have a way to process our trauma and our grief. And now you know what my day is like. That's why I said I have to switch from feeling mode when she's asleep to function mode when she's awake. And I just get cranky because I can't deal with all this energy. I'm trying to find something she can play with that's not loud. Here's soggy cardboard. Here you go. Go chew on that. I know I'm trying to have like a real conversation, and she just wants to play. That's what this all is. And I don't even know if I want to know what's happening out in the world. You know, it's my greatest fear. It's the same reason I don't walk over and go, look at that puppy and that kitten. You know, who am I to decide if they live or die? I can't take care of them. I can't even take care of us. And anything I go and do for them, other than, you know, bring them into a safe and comfort zone, is because of my anxiety and discomfort around their suffering. They might have already been picked off by the coyotes for all I know. I mean, nature eats everything. Everything is food. That's something we've lost, you know, in our process. I just look at her and her innocence, and I just think about their puppy and kitten and their innocence, and I hate that. I talked about that yesterday. You know, what happens to the children when their innocence is sacrificed in the midst of all these crises that we made that were completely unnecessary, but we just didn't feel compelled to be honest with ourselves about what was happening, which gets back, you know, to my original statement of shaming the sheeple. You know, one of my belief systems is we have to live with personal responsibility, and that's the consequences of our choices and decision. And as a culture, as a civilization, we decided to not look, and I am terrified that we are now going to be living with the consequences of the decision to not look. You know, one of the things that was happening right before all this was the Roe v. Wade decision. And as a civilization, we were under the idea that you could legislate without consequence. We think that in war, right? You can murder in war and not have personal consequence for killing, right? You can have medical procedures to avoid personal consequences, but there's no version of that, you know, that is true. Whether you know, when you make a choice, you know, you have sex, and there's a consequence. Whether you choose to raise the baby, whether you choose to give the baby, whether you choose to, you know, deny and get rid of the baby, those are all consequences. You're not absolved of your consequence, and it's hard to not have emotion about it, right? So, but I always, you know, prefer to do that privately, because you aren't my responsibility in that way. I can't make you not experience consequences of your choices. And like my parents, like everybody else, we all had to make decisions. And, you know, people had to feed their families. They had to go to work. Like, I love people who go to work and work hard. I love producers and makers and people who, you know, are gone all day creating this world that we have lived in luxury, that had so much luxury that we could sit around and debate philosophy. You know, I have a little tiny window now where I allow myself, before the sun comes up, not to be philosophical, but to feel and write in my journal. And then I put that away, and we move on with the day as best we can. Ouch, it's back. She made short work of that cardboard. Ouch, here, go get this. Go get this. So anyways, I'm going to cut this here because the whole point was, you know, I miss my people. I miss knowing what's going on with my people. I'm terrified about what's going on with my people. And there's nothing I can do about it except feel the grief and feel the loss, and hopefully pray, if I'm still here, that we get to a place where we can collectively acknowledge all of this. It's the best way to manage the trauma of these kinds of events is to come together in a way to collectively mark them and then let them go. But I'm not in the letting go phase. I'm still in the I don't want this phase. And that's for today. I will see you tomorrow.